Only 24 of the 31 clubs will compete in the Stanley Cup playoffs this summer. Hey, the NHL had enough problems. Yeah, finding the contending teams' players on the golf courses. Hey, this is Will O'Toole. I'm bringing you another sports history moment for Barnburner. And I'd like to welcome you to the show. That was my cartoon posted for this week on the NHL idea for expanding the NHL playoffs if they ever come back from the coronavirus. Right now, they're thinking about having 24, which is an expansion from 16. And I thought maybe I'd spend a few minutes just doing a little history of the NHL when it comes to the playoffs. First of all, if they do come through with 24, I'd like to know if they can find not just the non-contending teams, but if they can find all the contending team players and get them off the golf courses, because by the time they gin this up, it's going to be almost time to go into preseason practice in September. And I'm not making light of the subject as much as just kind of laughing at the potential logistics of what's going to occur. In fact, I thought maybe what the NHL should do is either invite all of them, and I'd say, well, you have 31 teams, and here's something I thought about as I was creating the cartoon, and that would be this: add a 32nd team, have the expansion team, Seattle Club, participate in this year's NHL Stanley Cup. Now you have 5 rounds. And there would be all of the teams involved. It would be kind of crazy. And the expansion team, Seattle, how great would that be for the NHL? That a team that never had any basic spring training or whatever, you just assemble all the players that they were potentially going to have, put them in a lineup, put them in a Seattle uniform, and see how well they can do in the playoffs. Wouldn't they have, I tell you, the more and more how crazy this idea is, the more and more I think it might just work, because you would definitely have the nation's attention with this. Could a team basically of bad news bears players, teams that were basically the reprobates, the discarded players from other teams' franchises, could they, for maybe 5-6 weeks of the summer, get together and maybe have a run at the NHL playoffs? Why it would be so crazy and so much fun? Well, the season's been kind of ruined by adding 24 teams. And if you think it's kind of crazy to have an expansion team win it, well, what's the sense of having the worst team, number 24 in your playoff, win it? Maybe what they should have done was gone back to an original 6 format when they only had 4 teams out of the 6 make the playoffs. And, well, it's almost 2/3 as it is right now. But you might just take the champions of each division and just square them off, and maybe even make it a 9-game playoff for the semis and the finals. But I really like my idea of getting an expansion team and just drafting the players, throwing them out there on the ice, and just say, go win, baby, as Al Davis would say. And it would be kind of fun. And just mark them, just do it like they do in college basketball. Seed them from 1 to 32 and have the number 1 seed play the number 32 seed and go from there. Or if they wanted to keep it by division, they could do it that way as well. 1 versus 16, 2, 15, etc. until you get to the finals. But I think that would be a novel way of introducing a franchise. Really, from a public relations standpoint, now you're you are getting a new franchise, so much marketing and public relations, as I stumble over the words. So I'm just going to forget what word I was going to use. Believe me, it was very sophisticated. I'm going to keep it here and keep it simple, folks. But it would be funny to have the 32nd team and expansion team win the NHL. And wouldn't that be the exclamation point on a season gone wrong? Think about it, NHL. I hope you do come back. I am rooting for all the teams and all the leagues to come back and make a comeback and show a little fearlessness. And I think they can and show a little, basically, we've been setting up banners and stuff for and rightfully so, for all the heroism being demonstrated by our policemen, our firemen, our nurses, and our doctors, our EMTs, etc. All the people that have been working during this pandemic. But it would be kind of cool if our athletes said, you know what, we're going to take people's minds off the whole thing, and we're just going to play. And I know there's all legal kinds of things, and there's all labor union type of constraints that you have to get past, and arguments and debates, etc. But wouldn't it be just fun to have that? And really, it would be actually, if you could get baseball and basketball and hockey back for the summer, how great would that summer be in terms of sports? Because baseball would be concerned, and there would be a huge concern, but you would have chock full basically every night, and every night just 3 games, 3 different leagues going at once. And what they could really do and have some fun with this, and really turn up marketing and interest, is just play the games not at prime time, just play them all different times of the day. Start the games at noon. Start the games at 9 o'clock in the morning. What difference at this point does it make? Anyway, I was going to take this a little bit to talk about the NHL playoffs. I have to be very honest with you. I'm not a big NHL fan. I follow the playoffs. I don't know all the player stats like I do sometimes with baseball. Like I can just peel off Johnny Bench 1970 and say 45, 148, 293. Or I can say that, Denny McLain 30-5 in 1968 with a 1.97 ERA. I can't do that with hockey. Sometimes the demands of following one sport supersedes following in-depth other sports. And you kind of, not so much just follow it from afar, but you don't really get embedded into the sport like you do. And for me, the prejudice being for baseball. I love crunching the numbers in baseball. First of all, baseball has so many cool numbers that you can really account for and twist and turn and really discover the worth of an individual. It's a little bit more difficult with the time sports like baseball, basketball, and football, because so much of winning in those sports is really taking the lead, like in football, and just sucking up the clock. And of course, you have the offense and the defense kind of having their own set of teams in football. Basketball, a little bit different, but usually in basketball, you have that one player who's the go-to. I mean, if anyone thinks that Michael Jordan wasn't taking the last shot for the Bulls, they'd find themselves on another team, or Larry Bird for the Celtics. And in hockey, many times it's the same way. They always tell you, just like in football, the lead guy always seems to be the one guy out there by himself, the quarterback. And you go as far as your quarterback is talented. Same thing with hockey. I do like that about hockey. I think it's kind of cool that the hockey goalies, a game where the goals and the assists are so important, but it really comes down to great goaltending many times in the playoffs. And I can think of many, that's one thing, I can think of many goalies off the tip of my tongue that have really excelled in the NHL playoffs, starting with Ken Dryden, who killed me back in 1970-71 as a rookie coming out of Cornell. So you knew that he was very smart. He goes on to become an attorney. And this is an argument for another day. I don't know why Ken Dryden isn't seen, and maybe he is in maybe other circles of real hockey fanatics and real hockey fans, but sometimes he's overlooked in my mind. And really, he was the prototype in many respects for the hockey goalie of today. 6'3", very agile, smart, extremely smart. And he rallied that Canadian team, crushed me in the 71 finals because they beat the Blackhawks. I can remember listening to the game with my brothers on the radio in May, and hearing just those names, the Mahavlich brothers, ending my fun in the NHL Stanley Cup that year. I was devastated. And it was all led by Ken Dryden, who won the Rookie of the Year the following season. That's kind of a trivia question, but He was the leader of that 71 team, which is another classic dynasty team for the Canadiens. But that got me thinking, and I just wanted to do something because many times, as I've stated in my previous broadcast or podcast, that when I do a cartoon, sometimes I do some research on it, or it's a catalyst for me to do research. I actually love doing hockey cartoons because they're just so much fun. Here's a little side note. I love doing the hockey jerseys. Each one is unique. Football, everyone has the same stripes, and they don't have logos like you do in the hockey, which is something I love. I don't know for this day why the Cleveland Browns don't put that 1969 logo of that little elf as a patch. I'd be buying that jersey right now. Not so much on the helmet. Maybe you could have a little press-on sticker in the back because they have a classic helmet, old school and all the rest of it. But they're constantly trying to work with that brown and orange. Just stick that great logo. And by the way, the Cowboys should change that star. When they do those retro games, I'd love to see the Cowboys use the old logo of the cowboy running on the horse. I would have pumped them up, but I didn't know where I was going with this particular podcast. These are just things I'm thinking of off the top of my head in terms of the emblems because I love that. And this goes back to I just love doing the hockey jerseys. There's just each one is so unique. They're very colorful. Although right now the game is very confusing because when I was growing up, the home team always wore the white. And the away team always wore the dark jerseys. And so many times today, if I do catch a game, I'm saying, "Oh, wait a minute. Why is everyone rooting for the Rangers? I thought they're on the road." And you realize the game is being played at Madison Square Garden. But what I wanted to take a look at today was real quick. It's just the history of the NHL in terms of the hockey. And one of the things I really wanted to get to, and this is kind of unique with hockey, of all the sports, of all the four major sports in North America. And hockey has had more winning or more MVPs, the Conn Smythe Trophy winners, from losing teams in the NHL playoffs than the other three sports put together. Now I got to get my glasses. But here's what they have. And please, I apologize if I mispronounce these names, the hockey names. I'm not as familiar with them as I am with the baseball names. But in hockey, you had, and it's funny how in the very beginning, after hockey expanded in the late 60s, you had three winners, all in the 60s. They were Dave Crozier, that's Crozier for Detroit, when they lost to Montreal in 66. Then you have Dave Keon of Toronto, and they lost in 67 to the Montreal Canadiens, I believe, right? And then you have one of my favorites because he always upchucked. That was his big thing, the goaltender for the St. Louis Blues, one of my personal favorite teams. And I guess I just always fell in love with two things. I love the Ralston Purina arena with the little checkerboards. And I always thought it was kind of cool that Ralston Purina, makers of dog chow and all the animal foods and stuff, that they actually owned a hockey team. I always thought that was pretty cool. But Glenn Hall won it in 68. And then you go a few years, and Reggie Leach won it in 76 when the Flyers went for the third time to the Stanley Cup, and they lost to Montreal. All four of the first teams I mentioned, or all four of the first MVPs I mentioned, they all lost to the Canadiens. I'm wondering, too, if there was maybe a little bias against the Canadiens for having one of their guys win, because they were winning everything. They were like the Yankees of hockey. You have to remember that. And then you go all the way from 76 all the way to 2003 before you get another MVP from a losing team, and that's with the Anaheim Ducks, and that was Jean-Sébastien Giguère. I hope I pronounced that right, and I do apologize if I didn't. Giguère, Giguere, and I apologize if I don't get the French accents correct or correctly. But 5 MVPs. However, this, of course, is an answer to every Super Bowl trivia contest that you have every year. Still to this day, the only MVP in the Super Bowl was Chuck Howley. Played linebacker for the Cowboys, had a couple of interceptions and a fumble recovery, I think, in the 71 season, but in the Super Bowl V against the game that was called aptly the Blunder Bowl because there were so many turnovers. They had more turnovers than a bakery on a Sunday morning. But the Cowboys ultimately would win the following year, and in 71 beating the Dolphins. But Chuck Howley, number 54, was the MVP for the Dallas Cowboys, the only one from a losing team in the Super Bowl history. And then here's the thing. I was really amazed. In 69, I think it was the first year that the NBA actually awarded an MVP. Jerry West won it. And it's probably where they got the idea to make Jerry West the symbol for the NBA. You know, that iconic guy dribbling the basketball. It's a great one. I still like baseballs better, but okay. And West won it for 69. That was the last year that the Celtics, with Bill Russell on the bench, won the title. And then the following year, of course, West goes and they play the New York Knicks and lose a dramatic 7-game series. In that game, or in that series, people forget that West launched a half-court shot to tie the game and send it into overtime. I think it was Game 5. And if, and I know my brother Eddie always tells me, if is a big word, even though it's 2 letters. But if, let's just presuppose, if they were playing that game today, the Lakers win the game in regulation with the advent of the 3-point shot. And last but not least, it's interesting, in 1960, Bobby Richardson for the New York Yankees. He had 12 RBIs in that 1960 7-game loss to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Probably there could have been another MVP there. And it could have been one of the pitchers for the Pirates, but I'm also thinking this. Might have been, or could have been, arguably, Roberto Clemente, because he hit safely in all 7 games. And another interesting thing about Clemente, not only did he hit safely in all 7 of those games, but in his only other appearance in the World Series 71, he had hits in every one of those 7 games. So he had a 14-game hitting streak in the World Series. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty amazing. But just getting back, here's the NHL. It is interesting. One other thing I wanted to point out with the NHL, one thing I do like, I guess, is that they do it, with the regions, and it seems to have, I know this sounds kind of funny when I say this, but it seems like hockey sets up their playoffs, and you almost like more of the regional way that they set it up than the NBA. I don't know why I like it that way. I guess it's because being from the New York area, we're more attuned to, let's say, the traditional teams, Boston, New York, and Montreal, with Toronto just up there. So we have 4 of the 6 original teams pretty much, not so much in this area, but on the East Coast or in the Eastern time zone, even though Detroit is as well. But it seems like it captures it. Plus, number 2, staying with the East Coast, here's what else I like about the NHL playoffs. You're almost bound to see, and you're hoping to see it this year, another rematch between the Rangers and the Islanders. They had some great series back in the early 80s when the Islanders were the team to beat, and the Rangers were always, the step sister to them. They just could never get over the hump of beating the Islanders, and of course the Islanders win 4 straight before they're taken down by Edmonton. But what I like about the hockey, and as I said, it probably works more in the East than it does anywhere else, but there is that strong regional rivalry that goes on. And I'm kind of right with this because I was looking at individual playoffs over the years, and I noticed this, that Montreal has battled the Bruins the most times in their playoff history. Now, yes, I know they were one of the original 6. They were probably playing in the playoffs every year, but you remember that Boston, like New York, stunk every year for a while there. And Montreal and, of course, pretty much Boston were in the same region for, I think, late in the 70s or in the middle part of the 70s. They moved one of them to another division, and they renamed it. It was just just all over the place with putting teams here, there, and everywhere. But with hockey, I really do like the playoffs because you get that real regional rivalry type of thing. So if the Rangers aren't playing, let's say, the Islanders, they're bound to be playing, let's say, the Devils or the Flyers, or the Flyers might be playing the Capitals, or Pittsburgh. And of course, Boston is one of those teams. They could play any of the original teams, and you're going to get a great rivalry. So it's kind of special here in the Northeast with those collection of teams that it really generates a lot of interest because it's backyard rivalries. It kind of reminds me of the Brooklyn, New York Yankees, the Brooklyn, New York Giants, the New York Giants, New York Yankees, that whole rivalry during the 1950s. And then one other thing I was just going to make, I'll say this. I wish that the NHL would do what they did originally back in 67 and 68. And it was kind of fun. When they expanded, they just jumped out and they included teams in St. Louis, Philadelphia, Oakland. They were the California Golden Seals, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, and Minnesota. I still love that name, and I wish the Dallas Stars would actually adopt it again, and that is the North Stars, the Minnesota North Stars. I know it doesn't make sense, but you can actually argue, hey, Dallas is farther north than Mexico City, okay? But they had great uniforms, too. And so they put those teams in their own division, which was one of the reasons why, and they were pretty smart about this, St. Louis. They went out and got a veteran goalie in Glenn Hall, and he led them to back-to-back appearances in the Stanley Cup Finals, which isn't, based on it's almost like an artificial way of putting them there, but they did get there and the other teams didn't. And it kind of helped get their franchise moving because they have a good fan base in St. Louis. I know that they wanted to move to Saskatoon, or there's rumors years ago back in the 80s, but they got better financing, better management, and now they have the defending Stanley Cup team. And who knows if they're going to be able to defend it this year, or we'll have to wait until next spring. It's a shame. But anyway, that's my cartoon of the day. Everyone enjoy. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon. This is Will O'Toole for Barnburner. Bye now.